Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. Purdue was better than their record indicated in 2020. The Boilermakers started off 2-0 with wins against Iowa and Illinois, but lost their final 4 games, including 3 by 1 possession. They have now missed a bowl game in each of the last 2 seasons after making them in each of the 2 years prior, which means that this is making for a huge year 5 for Jeff Brohm in West Lafayette. So again, guys, welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, here to predict Purdue's record and schedule for this 2021 college football season. As always, make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and also make sure to check out everything down in the description below, including our expert picks over on our website, thegridironexpert.com. Some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country for one of the lowest prices in the entire country. I promise you don't want to miss out on it. Go sign up today, again, over on thegridironexpert.com. So again, we said this is a huge year 5 for Jeff Brohm. He made a bowl game in each of his first 2 seasons with Purdue. They have now missed a bowl game in each of the last 2 seasons. Now again, take last year with a grain of salt. Purdue is better than their record indicated, and we were all dealing with COVID. So teams, they might not have even gone bowling. Might have chosen to opt out. But still, 2-4, not necessarily ideal. When you look at the schedule this year, guys, it's going to be very, very difficult to get to the postseason in year 5. We take a look at their roster. 7 starters back on offense. The major question for Purdue is who is going to play quarterback. We think Jack Plummer is going to beat out Aidan O'Connell. But both of these guys have shared times. For whatever reason, they have been playing at the same time over the last year or so. The two combined for over 1,800 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. Purdue averaged 309 passing yards per game. So each of these quarterbacks threw for over 900 yards, and each of these quarterbacks were efficient at times. Brohm really can't settle on one quarterback. And again, we do think it will be Plummer. At the end of the day, though, it's going to be a matter of, it doesn't really matter who's under center, it's just going to matter of whoever is, can they get the ball to David Bell? Because that's going to be the biggest playmaker and the workhorse for this Purdue offense. We know that Rondale Moore is gone. He was their speedster. He was their do-it-all player. He is now gone, which means Bell has got to step up. And Bell had a solid year, 625 yards and 8 touchdowns last year. So whoever is throwing the ball, David Bell is going to be the primary receiver. The final thing we'll say about Purdue's offense is the fact that while we know they can pass the ball, that's what Brohm wants to do, they've got to find a way to improve up front and improve their rushing attack. Purdue averages 81.5 rushing yards per game. Last in the Big Ten, 124th in the country. Xander Horvath has got to improve his running game. He had rushed for over 400 yards last year, but Purdue as a whole has to take the pressure off of whoever's under center. Defensively, the Boilermakers returned 7 starters as well, have a brand new defensive coordinator in Brad Lambert. They obviously have George Karlaftis, one of the best defensive linemen in the entire country. He is the best player on that side of the ball. He is the leader of this defense. And when they face some weaker offensive lines, he's going to go out there and have one heck of a day. Led the team last year with 2 sacks, has 9.5 sacks in his Purdue career, and he will be going pro after this year. First-round draft pick. Corey Trice and Cam Allen lead a secondary. Both of those guys very solid in the backfield, but they need improvement there. Purdue has allowed 254.2 passing yards per game. They allowed 29.8 points per game. As a whole, we know Purdue's offense really is never the issue. It's the defense that's holding them back. And that's going to be the difference in whether or not they get back to the postseason this year or if they fall just short again. We take a look at their schedule. A very interesting non-conference schedule, guys. They play Oregon State, a road game at UConn, and then obviously the road game at Notre Dame. It's very, very interesting. But we're going to start with Oregon State here on that first Saturday of September. Oregon State, many actually say that Purdue is like the Oregon State of the Big Ten. I think that's a very interesting but fair comparison. Oregon State last year went 2-5. Also had 3 losses by 1 possession, probably a little bit better than their record indicated. But when you look at the Beavers, they have an interesting quarterback situation going on too. Tristan Gebbia played well for Oregon State, but now Sam Neuer has transferred to Oregon State, the former quarterback at Colorado. The biggest thing that Oregon State lost, though, is their running back, Jamar Jefferson. He was their dynamic playmaker. Rondale Moore for Purdue, Jamar Jefferson for Oregon State. The Beavers were a very good rushing team, but their passing defense was not too much. Allowed 224.7 passing yards per game. This is a game where I think Purdue will be tested. Certainly their defense will be tested. But as they're trying to figure out their new identity, coming on the road in the first game of the season with a potential sold-out crowd, I don't think that's the place to do that. I think Purdue gets a win at home, and a close one, over the Beavers, mainly behind their passing attack, whether it's Plummer or O'Connell throwing the ball. They then travel to UConn. I'll chalk that up as a quick victory. We're not really expecting anything from UConn this season. Really, who is? Of course, the Huskies, though, now a member of the Independent, no longer a member of the American Athletic. That's happened for a while now. They then travel to Notre Dame, another intriguing non-conference game, a little bit more difficult than the likes of Oregon State or UConn. Notre Dame is one of those teams where they've got to find their footing early if they want to remain elite contenders in the country, because they lost so much from the team that made the college football playoff last year. You lose Ian Book. You lose a handful of starters on the offensive line, your big-time pass catchers, and a couple guys on defense as well. It's the offense that worries me the most. Jack Cohn will now be stepping in as quarterback, the transfer from Wisconsin. Kyron Williams, I think, will be one of the better running backs in the country. It's not the offense that's going to do it for Notre Dame, though. It's going to be their defense. Marcus Freeman coming over for Cincinnati, one of the best defensive coordinators in the game. He's going to be the difference maker for Notre Dame this year. And with 6 starters back on that side of the ball, and one of the better secondaries maybe in the country this year, I think Notre Dame gets the job done against Purdue, especially in South Bend. They're going to get the job done in South Bend. Purdue gets their first loss of the year. They're 2-1. They return home to take on Illinois, and they beat the Fighting Illini 31-24 last year. Remember, we said they started 2-0. They beat Iowa. They beat Illinois. And you look at the Fighting Illini now. Brand new head coach in Brett Bielema. A lot of the same players that were with Illinois last year, the team that went, 2-6, they're back. So why would we expect Illinois to take a major step forward? Yes, the culture has changed. Yes, the coaching has changed. But we're not really expecting the Fighting Illini to do much in year 1 under Brett Bielema. Purdue can win last year. They can win this year, and they will. They'll defeat Illinois to round out September. And Jeff Brohm's Boilermakers are halfway to bowl eligibility, sitting at 3-1 going into October. So things are trending up. They're looking good. Problem is, the bulk of Big Ten play begins, and it's very, very difficult. They start against Minnesota, or this big stretch we're talking about begins with Minnesota in October. And you look at the history between these two programs, guys. Minnesota has defeated Purdue 3 times in a row. They've won 3 straight games over the Boilermakers. Purdue has lost 7 of the last 8 against Minnesota. That includes a 34-31 loss last year. Now look at the Golden Gophers now. They took a step back in 2020. They're one of those teams I expect to bounce back in 2021. 9 starters back on offense, 6 back on defense. PJ Fleck is their head coach. This team is not afraid of anything. And I expect their offense, which really sputtered at times last year, to really, really improve. And they're going to be able to come on the road and beat Purdue. I think Purdue's secondary struggles a little bit against Tanner Morgan, and you cannot sleep on Muhammad Ibrahim as well, guys. One of the best running backs in the conference. He's going to light up a bunch of teams this year. Purdue might be one of them. Minnesota wins, and Purdue's 3-2. They get their bye week going into October 16th, and it's not ideal to play arguably the top 2 teams in the West in back-to-back weeks. You got Iowa and Wisconsin, one on the road, one at home, but neither of which I think are going to be victories for Purdue. You look at Iowa. Yes, they beat the Hawkeyes 24-20 last year, but Iowa is going to be better than they were last year, a team that finished on a 6-game winning streak. 6-game winning streak. Their defense will be one of the best in the country. They already were last year. They had a top 10 defense last year. They're going to have it again this year, especially in the secondary, which is obviously what Purdue's strength offensively is going to be, is throwing the ball. You don't want to throw the ball against good secondaries, and Purdue doesn't have a rushing offense. And even if they did, Iowa has one of the best rushing defenses in the nation, so that's not going to matter. At Kinnick Stadium, tack on that, I don't see Purdue standing a chance against the Hawkeyes here. I don't see them standing a chance against Wisconsin either. Wisconsin's the best team in the Big Ten West. Graham Mertz is back. His top 4 pass catchers are back. 8 starters are back on defense, one that was 5th in the nation. I just don't see Purdue having enough to beat Wisconsin, even though the game is at home. So just like that, a 3-1 start has now turned into a 3-4 start. They've now dropped 3 straight games, all in conference play. The Boilermakers then traveled to Nebraska. We used a little bit of logic when we did our Nebraska prediction. We said, all right, Nebraska beat Purdue 37-27 in West Lafayette last year. That wasn't a Nebraska team that was any special. Well, we think Nebraska could be a little bit better. Nothing spectacular, but a little bit better now. And they're hosting the game in Lincoln, and Purdue's coming off tough games against Iowa and Wisconsin. Nebraska's strength is also their defense this year. 9 starters back on that side of the ball. So if Nebraska can get a double-digit win on the road last year with a team that may have been worse than they're going to be this year, why can't Nebraska do it again? We think they will. Nebraska beats Purdue in Lincoln behind the strength of their defense. No doubt in my mind. Purdue then comes back home and takes on Michigan State. This is a winnable game. This is very good. They're getting the Spartans at home. That's huge. You look at Mel Tucker. He's entering year 2. Expectations are not that high at East Lansing. They beat Michigan. They beat Northwestern last year. Those were 2 huge quality wins. Really what Purdue needs, or what Michigan State needs to do is just show improvement. I think they will do that, especially on offense. And then Anthony Russo, the transfer quarterback. A lot of their wide receivers are back. The offense should take a major step forward after averaging just 18 points per game. It's the defense that worries me. The defense should improve. They allowed over 35 points per game last year. It's hard to see a significant improvement from just one year, especially a year that we've been dealing with. So Purdue, yes, is in the midst of now a 4-game losing streak. They're taking on Michigan State. I really think this could be a high-scoring game. I think Michigan State's passing attack will be electric. I think the same can be said for Purdue. Neither has a great defense. But I like Jeff Brohm at home in West Lafayette to get the job done. They usually play relatively well at home. This is a winnable game, and they will win this game. They'll beat Michigan State to kick off November. So now they have 4 wins. They need 2 more to go bowling. We know they're not going to beat Ohio State. I don't mean to be harsh, but we know they're not going to beat Ohio State. I don't know if there's anybody in the Big Ten that can. Yes, the Buckeyes are going through quarterback changes. Yes, their secondary wasn't all that great. I think Purdue could put up maybe 24 points on the Buckeyes. I do. But the game's in Columbus. They put up 24. Ohio State will put up 56. It's not going to matter. Buckeyes win big at home, which means that Purdue needs to win out. The game against Northwestern in Chicago and Indiana at home if they want to make a bowl game after missing out on the last 2 years. The game against Northwestern in Chicago is a winnable game. I will say that. If you remember last year, the Wildcats and the Boilermakers played against each other with the West Division kind of on the line. Each team was at 2-0. We knew the season was going to be very short, so we know whoever won that game between Northwestern and Purdue was going to control their own destiny in the Big Ten. And Northwestern, or the Big Ten West. And Northwestern got the win over the Boilermakers 27-20, ultimately won the Big Ten West. So that game may have ended up proving to be right, ended up proving to be the Big Ten West Championship in some sort of way. We know Northwestern's not going to repeat as West champions. They lost too much. Peyton Ramsey is gone. Big-time playmakers on defense are gone. We know they're going to take a step back. What we do know is that Pat Fitzgerald, to me, is a better coach than Jeff Brohm. Pat Fitzgerald is one of the best coaches in the entire country. We know by this point that Ryan Helinski, the transfer quarterback from South Carolina, should have gotten a feel of this offense. Lord, I would hope so by November 20th. I would hope so by week 11 that they're going to have things under control. And we know that Northwestern's defense, especially in their secondary, led by Brandon Joseph, could once again be one of the best within the Big Ten Conference. I look at Northwestern guys and I say, look, I don't expect them to repeat as West champs. I don't expect them to contend for a New Year's Six Bowl or anything like that, but they're going to go bowling and they're going to beat Northwestern. They're going to beat Purdue. And I will say, this is a game too where Northwestern, they have a very difficult middle of the stretch here. Middle of the season, it's very difficult for them. This game against Purdue could be huge in determining if they go bowling or not. And I think Pat Fitzgerald and his squad rise to the occasion. They get the job done close against the Boilermakers. Which means that Purdue, sitting at 4 wins, cannot go bowling, regardless of what happens in their game against Indiana. And I will say that the game against Indiana, while they can't go bowling, will be a big one for Purdue. It's a rivalry game. And as we always say, in rivalry week, we throw records out the window. Nothing matters because teams always play better against their rivals. Purdue, Indiana, no exception. The last 4 games between these squads have been decided by 1 possession. That includes a 44-41 overtime thriller back in 2019. Indiana winning that game, though. The Hoosiers are a different animal, though, guys. They returned 17 starters. Surprised a lot of people last year by nearly beating Ohio State. 42-35 loss for them. Ended up making the Outback Bowl before falling to Ole Miss. 17 starters, including Michael Penix, Ty Freifogel, Peyton Hendershot. 8 starters back on the defensive side of the ball, led by Micah McFadden at linebacker. Tom Allen has his team ready to go. And as we said in our Indiana video, he's a coach, and this is a team that's not afraid of anybody. They are not afraid of anybody. They are not afraid of any environment, any team, any coach, nothing. They're going to come into Purdue, and they're going to get a win. Indiana's defense ultimately is a difference maker. Purdue's going to be a little bit one-dimensional. I don't expect them to have much of a rushing attack. So Indiana hones in on the pass. Purdue's secondary still a little sketchy after being mediocre last year. We know Indiana's strength is going to be the pass. In a game that I think is going to be close. Last 4 games have been decided by 1 possession. Let's make it the last 5. The Hoosiers get the best of their in-state rival. They are going to be in the contention for a New Year's Six bowl game. Purdue will once again be home for the holidays with a 4-8 record. Now, I know, guys, it's a major disappointment. Many might disagree with that. If you're looking for areas where they could improve, maybe they're able to get a win over Minnesota. Maybe they can beat Nebraska. Maybe they can beat Northwestern. There are a couple toss-up games. But even in those toss-up games, I'd still give those teams that we have them losing to a 55 to 60% chance to win. I think Purdue is still on the lower end of the spectrum in terms of percentage-wise, winning percentage of winning those games. The Boilermakers were better than their record showed last year. The talent is, again, back this year. The schedule, though, is just absolutely brutal. It's extremely tough. And so, again, 4-8 for the Boilermakers might be the end of the Jeff Brohm era. And I might say that's a mistake because this team is certainly going to be better than their final record indicates. So, again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. Also, make sure to check out everything down in the description below. We've got so much exclusive content down there for you, including our expert picks on the website, thegridironexpert.com. So make sure to go give those a look and sign up today. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.